We're live. Sorry, I was trying to wait for chairs to be brought in, but it looks like that's going to take a little longer. So today's a freeform contributor meetup day. We've got an Etherpad out there. Oh, good. Someone did some formatting. That's good. So any topics that you want to talk about, get it out on the Etherpad. Just add it to the bottom, and I guess we'll just start at the top and work our way through, see where it goes. So I guess who maybe if you could also add who adds the topic, but does anyone want to take the first one here, or who added that?
So the problem is to make it discoverable for the horizon that a backup service is enabled, and actually same goes for the consistency groups. It's a pretty similar case where there are deployments that won't be able to do consistency group calls. So the problem is how to address that with kind of API features discover. We were thinking about well, the spec proposes a new API for that, like the deployment twice to define the features. But I've also thought of using the existing extensions API. So you can list available extensions in the API. But that was discarded because it is configurable to the configuration options, and it is maybe out of sync with the actual state of the deployment. So like backup API will be still on, the backup extension will be still on, even if we don't have any backup service in the deployment. So that won't be actually what the spec is proposing. Yeah.
So I wonder if I
have more thoughts on that. So Nova in this mailing list. Oh wait, that's my comment here. Also Nova in this mailing list post, and Sean Deck is thinking about getting possible actions on the VM listed in the API. It's on the bottom. Yeah, so he's proposing something like that for the individual VMs. I don't know if you want to follow that direction to list possible actions on an individual volume or other resource.
We're at capacity, sorry.
Okay, so wait, did you say this is different than what you're proposing in the spec?
That's not my spec.
Oh, okay. It's like
I just interested in the topic. So spec proposes it to leave the capabilities deployment-wise. So called deployment to support backups or not, it's not for the individual volumes. I don't know with which approach is better here. So that's why I am bringing this up.
Put it in IRC.
So that one's on an individual server as opposed to like
a
driver backend instance of what it supports.
So we have driver capabilities, right?
We have like 4 capabilities already. There's an API call.
Yeah, we can list them. But that's backend wise, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So okay, we can probably squeeze that information into if backup service enabled or not into the capabilities. But how would Horizon consume it? How it would should it list all the services and ask all of them for capabilities to decide what actions are possible for a certain volume, or I don't know.
But then something like backup is a system-wide, not a backend specific capability. So,
Probably could be in the future. Like having some kind, like having multiple backends and only for Ceph we have backup enabled because we are backing to Ceph.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't fit in the current capabilities that's in there today.
You think it doesn't fit?
I don't think it, I mean, it's,
so
So I'm wondering if we have any place where we can put that, or should we create this whole new API for another type of discovery?
So probably a working group session during this.
I haven't been there. Yeah.
Obviously, they're trying to define a standard format API for capabilities.
Okay.
So system capabilities like that, the fact it's still on the back end of the that is data. And for capabilities.
Okay.
So there should be some problems there. We're sort of better off not having an API.
Was that the cross-project discovery session? Okay, I've been there. There wasn't any conclusions really.
No, somebody just start working.
Sorry?
Somebody just start working with the cross-project suggestion.
Okay.
It's probably worth waiting to see that happen for at least a couple of weeks.
Or working on it, right? Or why you want it to look.
Or like, to try to get this maybe cross-project.
Yeah.
yeah, it might be good to have ours worked out a little bit, and then if it differs from what they come up with, if there's some reason why that won't work, then we already know the issues. So you said there's not a spec yet, but it's just being discussed. Okay.
system capabilities and backend capabilities.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Makes sense. So I guess the conclusion is to get that to the cross-project, I don't know, meeting maybe.
Yeah, it might be good to bring this up.
Try to get it generic.
Yeah.
Is there any other project in OpenStack trying to use the Horizon config? There are so many more projects.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think Neutron have similar problems.
Yeah, Neutron would be.
Alex, you still pay attention to that group?
Yeah. What's the question?
Well, this discovery, tell us about one conflict with some your defined AWG things. Use your graviton. Say, hey, we're doing this. Let's get this defined.
So, like a new guideline kind of thing.
Probably.
That was mentioned grumbling from the working group. I don't know if it's that's bad yet or if it's.
It doesn't seem like it's anything yet that's talked about.
I guess it's just like what we just did with Lancaster, where it's like, well, we're doing this and they're talking about it. Let's get light a fire investigation. They're talking so that we can implement whatever it is they want
Right.
or the look and feel of it.
What we just proposed was respect every workshop.
Yeah, one way or another. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, probably proposing aspect to the API working group is the best idea because it would just have a discussion role.
Yeah, it'll definitely evolve once we propose it. So if we were to implement something before we proposed, that we would have the same issue that we have with microservices.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Save a little pain by like,
Yeah.
meeting with a, hey, here's what we're going to do, here's what it's going to look like, and what do you think? And I think the same.
Yeah. If you have any issues with it,
You get pretty far away, we merge it, it's pretty easy to change it. So, the experience we had with the microversion, where it's like, we were ready to merge it, and they were about to change it, and they changed this. We actually merged before they finally approved this back.
Which was better.
But they did change it, so it was okay. I mean, it was not ideal, that's all I'm saying.
Okay.
But should this be capacity complete with the capabilities and
Yeah.
maybe like kind of make the volume, existing volume capabilities the subset of this?
We don't have volume capabilities, I think. We have only bucket capabilities.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but should service capabilities be one level above? Because service after you enable initial services, the backend capabilities will come or they can be still independent. Should we have backend capabilities with this or leave it as separate?
I think they're independent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's 3 levels of that. So we can have deployment-wise capabilities, the backend-wise ones. So the volume type-wise probably. It should be. And then the volume can have itself some capabilities. I don't know, from the metadata it has or something.
What do you see as being a volume capability? That you-
Right now it's an extension API, so I don't.
How is that different than the reporting capabilities that we have now
Yeah.
with backends?
The tenants can't query, find out what API they call on their volume right now. There's no way of doing it. We don't want to expose all of the capabilities, seconds, tenant.
But why do we want to expose whether it's in a CG to the end user?
CG trade on that volume type of, rather than by calling it CG trade. So for the things that the tenant will make it on or not, depending on the difficulties you can expose that, only those things. So it's just really out. There's no programmatic way of finding out that
Actually,
volume types will be touched on that, right?
actually tenant can't even query for the service list, so we cannot know the internal services names. So how does tenant get the capabilities of the service? Is it even discoverable?
We don't want to.
Tenants, no, we don't.
We don't want to.
But tenant should know what's in the cloud, right? If he's talking to multiple clouds, then he needs to know what capabilities each of them have.
I think PT will argue with you on this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The TC's been driving and standardizing on everything, so I mean, they don't want one person to have a different set of capabilities than another.
Yeah, that's not realistic at all. That's not gonna happen.
I know, but
But that's why it's important for the user to be able to say, what can I do? with your
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's possible that this volume type thing is the only thing that really matters from a user perspective, because from the volume type, it creates volumes, which infers the capabilities that you have with your volume. You take backups of volume where you can. That's not tied to a volume type, so that may be different.
yeah.
You return the same value every volume type and still give you the same information. That is available on one type of web, on all types, you still return it in the type.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. No more toast.
Still looking for that.
You got it.
Right there.
Okay. Thanks for taking notes. All right. Scale IO one.
So, you have the volume
But right now, basically, the database also has, let's say, one, but that can actually eight, but that's not our thing. But that we can fix by returning more update for driver. But quota is one big problem because the quota is integrating API, but then when you create a volume, the scheduler and the manager, that's all after the quota update. So is there a way for us to fix that? It's almost, I was thinking about this, almost like we do some kind of like capabilities reporting.
So I've actually suggested, if anyone has used the Rackspace Cloud, you know that you can only create a volume of 50 gigs or greater. We do that in the backend, and I proposed a while ago, if people were interested in that, to put the code push the code up so that volume types would have limits, ranges, size ranges. And it wasn't either rejected or well received. So it seems like this is approximately the same thing. My question for the Scale IO question is, can you make a 6 gigabyte volume, or are they in increments of 5? It's on multiple. So it's multiple. So it's not using minimum. It's actually multiple. Right, but you can't do 9. It has to be multiples.
And how is Rackspace? Is it multiples or is it?
That's
the minimum.
It's a support thing. I don't want to support a volume that's 2 gigs and have to support all the people that are paying. It's quite honestly, right? And it also helps for our architecture. So you have less people on a node. It's really we didn't want a bunch of people on the same node.
So this is like a range of the size?
For us, we can go anywhere from 50 gigs to, and then we artificially capped it at 1 terabyte. So that's not quite the same.
Yeah. So one is the unit of allocation, and the other is the min and max range of that. That's what I'm thinking. I know one other storage system where, as a driver, you have to report up what your unit of allocation is, so you can say, I can only allocate in 5 gig increments. Yeah. 256 minutes. So default would be 1 gig increments, but for backends that need it, they can specify something else. Yeah, so the 3 things of increments, minimum, maximum. Yeah, because then Horizon could actually read that in and make sure that you can only do it within that range. Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can bring back infinite and unknown.
But when the process first way, it will not, it will only work if your customer is requesting that size.
So you reject your request, right?
Yeah.
We do.
In this case, we would. Yeah.
Someone asks for 1 gig volume and you can only give 8 gig volume. It's way better to say, no, you can't have 1 gig volume. Please ask for an 8 gig volume.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if we have the ability to validate the call on create, it's way easier. You're just like, no, try again.
Yeah.
Use 8.
And return a meaningful error saying,
Volume must be in increments of 8.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that in the Horizon, the user will be able to create a volume, just create out, and this is.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Horizon can just do that. You can have enough JavaScript checks and stuff like that.
So
Yeah. So we're not expecting multiple backends and one being Scale IO and one being something else that can handle other multiples.
If you have multiple backends within the same volume type with the same, you're inferred to have the same capabilities, those just might not work. Like it might not be possible to create a volume like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's behind the volume type. So Horizon would have to look at the volume type to figure out. Okay.
That does raise an interesting question of retype and migrate.
Yeah, all those same checks have to happen
Yeah.
against the volume type anytime we mess with the volume type.
But and then if we do enforce that right away up front, then we're able to err on that immediately and report back why. So, yeah. Yeah, they could do that.
Only find out there are other people from Scala who need this. Specify who those tribes are that require increments of a specific number.
Other than Scala?
Yeah.
Might be the only one right now.
I thought, I thought there was another one with 5 for some reason. Was there another driver with?
I thought there was a 5, but.
Yeah, I thought I heard
Then
5.
I thought it was Scala, and they're saying it's
Okay.
8, so
Maybe it changed.
Within provision volumes, we created. We've been kind of hiding that. So it's not a problem for the user, but it would make it more obvious.
It's like an AA meeting.
Hi, my name is.
I have scale. Oh my God.
Isn't there store like a create?
We still created a new one.
You can do restore,
You either get a brand new volume or you specify a volume.
yeah, so we get about.
You can't move the volume that way. Does it have to be the same volume?
It can be.
It just has to be another check.
We just check it.
If you got a 10 gig backup, you create a 16 gig, only when you install the 10 gig strip, will be right. If you're around, I think you'll have to say, oh, you check it out.
You can pass it the volume.
Yeah, hey,
One way or another, you're gonna see your volume. You don't have to because they have to create the self-capacity.
well, yeah, so that's just an API validation. Either is volume that you're asking to restore is big enough or not. If it's not, yeah, if you create a new volume, that's by side.
But you still got to restore.
It doesn't
automatically create a volume if you don't pass it.
Oh,
In every book, like, you say, give me back my phone,
That's-
all you ask you to sell.
that's a little goofy. But I mean, the only thing you do is create a web.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just one of those. That's just an ugly case, but not broken.
But what do you do with the quota? We haven't talked about quota actually. So, because quota, that's the API, right?
But you're
So
making all
if
the
we
checks
validate
up
up
front.
front, we don't have to.
You're making all the checks up front, so there's none of this re-quota in the back end after you allocate. It's always done up front.
We can do a roundup in the API.
So it solves all those problems. You just don't create the volume if you can't create that size, so you don't mess with it.
Otherwise.
I don't think you want certain cases in the quota. You don't allow them to get into the process of
Yeah.
create a volume. of
If
that
we
size.
enforce that size right from the start, then there's no manipulation.
And the problem with the backdoor quartering is that you could be oversubscribed and you have to fail after you've created the volume, and that would be just a,
Yeah, this solves all of those silly quota race things.
yeah.
So the question is, are we going to wait for this whole capabilities thing to happen? Like that capabilities to happen before we worry about that problem?
Yes.
I don't think
We're gonna have drivers report back like they're getting late and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can start doing all that.
Yeah.
Like go to the API for you can discover. Yeah. I just think that agree on terms. Pictures.
Max incremental. What if you don't have limits?
Not return. I mean, but everybody defaults to 1 gig as an allocation. So there's no 5 minutes.
Yeah, no maximum if it's not
Yeah.
incremental only if your driver.
I think that makes sense.
So it should be only the drivers that have to actually have these restrictions, set these things. If
We can just put up one on the default base driver class.
Default, if not specified, is 1 gig.
Yeah.
If there's no maxed allocation, then it's just not included in the capabilities. And if there's no min, it defaults to the allocation unit.
And no incremental, not there. Yeah, there's an evaluator scheduler that will actually catch, you can write things to schedule on max volume counts.
So to do that, your backend has to report back how
The
many
count.
meetings you're on. Cinder does that, Cinder volumes, right? It's
Yeah.
got other ones, right? The problem with that is the point in time in between intervals where your schedule is getting up in other graphs, you can get a limit of problems. So you have to use like, you put a limit on it, and you can use a layer to like drop off the way to get close.
Yeah.
In theory, if you're close though, like you should be open down, but you shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's part of
I
the
mean,
layer.
It's still racy, but
Yeah.
like if your whole cloud is full, you're already, like, you have major problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the recharge schedule, we've got back-end information on the recharge schedule, which is back-end.
The thing is, it's not space. It's like, I can have 100 terabytes free, and I just have to do anything, update the limit on it.
So that's like, yeah, okay, whatever that you get, the recharge schedule, we can track. No errors. No, it takes the recharge out.
So, I guess, short answer to your question, you have to make sure your driver is reporting the actual volume count or whatever thing you're concerned about.
Yeah, if the back ends have a hard limit. Some of them are, it's not so much the back end has, I mean, the back end has a limit, but it's more like the management console of the back end that has a limit as opposed to a hard limit on the array.
So I guess the only question is there any kind of stopgap to address the scale IO situation?
Just go quick, platform. I've recommended you got all limits. You can allocate those to students. Because then you can do, you've got evaluate functions with two variables. And if you further, you'll let the learn, and it goes up, you have to be variables. If your backend goes to a hard limit from either driver, before the hard limit can be, all the software, then you can line your evaluators come to two variables, not arbitrary value.
There is actually one for, it's not in the, I don't know. Anthony, didn't you write that? There's docs up in the admin guide or something that has examples of how to do that.
All right. Go on to user messages.
Sure. All right, so I just want to give an update on user messages and get a feel for how people think things are going, and if anybody hates it, I'd like to let them let me know. So if you're not familiar with user messages, it's a way to get messages to users for asynchronous operations. There's links here on the Etherpad. The first one's the patch. The second one is the actual message strings that we currently have defined. And then the debref link here actually has like what a message currently looks like. There's a few points that we got to figure out. So basically, we have event ID, which is really just like an error code, like which message you're getting. All settled on numbers. They don't really mean anything. They're not giving too much information away to the user about backend stuff. But we have a bunch of constants that just map to those numbers. So it's so easy as a developer to know which ones no valid hosts, which ones over image quotas, stuff like that. If folks are okay with that, then that's really the only thing holding the patch up besides me doing some minor tweaks to it.
I think we've needed this for a long time.
Agreed. So one thing, if there's something we don't like here, I'd like to figure it out soon. Manila wants this, Lance wants this. I want to do it the same way across all of them and then abstract it out. I'm just going to keep moving forward. So if we don't catch something now, it's going to get much harder to change. Are there any questions?
What is the meaning of event ID? Is that an error code or the event that you are trying to?
Well, the idea is that one of the kind of feature creep things that happen with this is it may not just be errors. So in the future, if we add some other kind of message, like an info message or something, like, I don't know what that would be exactly, which I hope we don't. We got a lot of other things to do before we get there. Yeah. It wouldn't make sense to error message.
And being able to use exactly the same events, exactly the same format, exactly the same streams and IDs and everything. In that, push out the exact knowledge you're looking at, then the message changes exact document for you.
And that's a different standard from messaging?
Well, that's replacing messaging.
Okay.
There's no messaging messaging right now. They're trying to define it for
So shouldn't we conform to that then? If
Yeah.
they're working on that? It does? No.
Shouldn't it be associated with a certain module of the project, or like say that this is related to Cinder, Manila, or something? Because
Oh yeah.
maybe I'm imagining a dashboard with so many messages of those, and the user does not understand where it comes from.
Yeah, this doesn't have the optional fields. Actually, I'll probably add those. There's also resource type. So in this case, it'd be volume.
Yeah, I see here in the
Yeah,
top one,
it's
but not
not
in
easy.
the producer message.
Yeah, I'll have to. It's definitely there, but
Oh, okay.
what's that?
If you can't see the comment on the review.
Yeah, yeah, it should be here. I need to update it. Yeah, I'm about to do it. I'm about to do it. Okay. So, yeah, you'll be able to filter on resource type or resource UID, any of these fields really. Because what I'm seeing is like in Horizon, if I go to look at a volume, it's an error state, kind of like instance faults, I'd like to see why. So, that way.
So that was my next question. From an operator perspective, is this going to be almost like in the operator?
Yes.
So there's also kind of like have some hidden stack or an instance or I mean, if such a thing exists, right? So that's a big thing that we see.
Sure.
Here's where they go up.
Yeah.
Here's where
Do we want any? Yeah, I mean, do we want any admin only fields on this?
that obviously is one if we want to add it.
Yeah.
If we have these things in, except camera, right?
Maybe it's an optional thing that we can turn on or turn off.
What's that?
Maybe it's an optional thing that we can turn on or turn off. The stack trace in there, because you may not want.
You want to see if you're at it, you don't need your customer to see if you're not.
Right.
Right. Well, the reason why I suggested it be an option is because if we're putting stack traces in every one, that's a lot more data.
But if you have a lot of stack, you have a problem.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of stack traces, you should be looking at the logs though, too.
Yeah.
I just think it's a lot of data to put into this message. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just easier, like, we had a dashboard for notes, right? You know, we could see the customer calls and complaints or order calls and complaints. You check the stack, you check the call, and the answer is no. Okay. You're an operator, you can actually understand.
Right, you don't even have to go digging.
Right.
Yeah.
Access to production logs is more restricted than access to the ops. Dashboard.
Okay.
Is there any use for like an action? Like you got there what we had like an action to be corrected.
Fix bug.
Fix it.
Fix bug.
Or don't do that, or.
Like I had
Button bridge launchpad.
I don't know.
The string is freeform, the string is freeform, and you change it.
I have another system where I could see where this could evolve, where you put in some kind of resolution action ID that Horizon could interpret so that they could have a button and, you know, go extend volume or what have you, but.
Yeah, I mean, for an error, that's like one thing, but I'm thinking like if you're just sending a bunch of alerts for random stuff, I mean, the admins need to filter out the ones of value, like what action do they take?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's just in use, yeah. Okay.
We already have event streams that admins can tap into.
Yeah.
Access to the phone. So I never think this admin, if you do admin.
Well, I think it's good.
Why we put stack cinder.
Yeah.
Really valuable, so. I think we probably can't extend it all that way. Just getting the core infrastructure and do that. So you don't have to get up all the way too much.
And having that request ID there will, I mean, you can find everything in the log with that.
Can you filter by backend?
No, because the user doesn't have any idea about backend.
Not for this. This is telling place in API, this is telling, yeah. If you want to set admin log of error, you can set up the stream, give that log messages, techniques. So a driver can create log of error and essentially set a system where the stream error is submitted to log of error.
I mean, it's possible to do something like volume type filtering or something. I'm just not seeing I don't know, of the use case that the user would understand the benefit. Yeah, something like that.
That's not fair.
Yeah, I'm not sure the use case would say, oh, I care about all the errors for this volume type.
Yeah, that volume is going to be in error state, right, with the volume type that was selected. Yeah.
You don't need any, the test doesn't get any detail. Point detail, so they all go to that.
Right, these have to be tenant actionable.
So then the example of no valid host is kind of not exact.
Which is why I put on that safety check that I have to. We contract body, trying to.
Right, I did update the actual message, I haven't updated the dev ref yet.
It's like really hard line between things that don't make sense.
Yes, so that's another point is that we have to add these case by case in the code. There's no other way around it. That's where all the work really is. I want everybody to be doing that constantly, thinking about it.
If most exceptions they inherit from their base exception, vanilla exception, cinder exception, is there not any way to add the code just to the base exception?
So Eric brought that up in the review actually about maybe we put an event ID on an error, and then when that gets caught, we know exactly what message to create and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of like a roundabout way. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that yet. I don't know. I think Eric was gonna play with me. Yeah, I want to be.
And if you maybe like the idea of caching all of the I think that's
Well, the way I have it right now is, or the way I'm thinking, and one of the examples is the driver would just raise the usual exception that would raise. I had to tweak it so that it raised a very specific exception, and then I catch it in the manager, and that's what decides to do the message. Like, I think the example is when you're trying to create an image from a volume, and glance, you hit your glance quota. Then you raise like an image over quota exception, and then the manager would say, okay, create that message. But there might be situations, and this is probably not the best example, where that exception gets raised, but you wouldn't want a message because maybe that's okay or something. I don't know. That's not a good example, but. Exactly.
But my own concept is if this operation fails, it's catching the open exception.
I'm not trying to fix it. Just anything in the driver, what are the appropriate?
Yeah, well, the difference is you want the event ID explicit in the exception when I have it more implicit. So it's instead of being a decision of the exception, it kind of moves the decision point. Yours is the driver is saying what the message is going to be. Mine is the manager is suggesting what it should be based on the context. Because the manager is the only thing that really knows the context of the situation, I guess. I don't know. I think there's more thinking there. Maybe we need to play around with it. But it definitely wouldn't be the first thing. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to run into like, okay, now we have like 20 messages, cases. How can we simplify this? And we'll figure that out. Okay, so I want to go back really quick to the admin stuff. So can we nail down whether or not we want an admin field with trace spec stuff? Yes, we can always add stuff later.
Well, I just don't want to talk about this particular patch.
Well,
I know, because this
yes.
feature is so easily useful, just with the pair, what we've done so far. You can get in and you can get people working on adding messages, would be the most productive thing to do.
Okay, so not in this patch, but
Yeah.
okay. I want to do it for our proliferate to all the other projects that want this, because I'm not trying to change shit in 10 different places. Okay. All right.
It is localized. That was my only other question.
Yes.
Good.
So let's look at that define messages link really quick.
Which one?
The second one you just had. Define
This one?
Yep.
Where it was?
Okay, so this is where the user-facing messages are defined. We wanted them all in one place because these are interfacing, and we need to be very careful with them. Yes. And these are all localized. And these are not stored in the database. These are looked up by their event ID. And that's so we're not filling up the database with stuff we could look up anyway. But also it may be translated.
Should they all have periods?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Kindle. Missing period. No, they need to be right at the source.
Yes, yes.
not- yeah.
I'll add some periods.
I'm joking, but I'm kind of curious as to what.
Yeah, these are user facing, so we do probably need to be a little bit more strict
Yes.
on making sure they're nice.
Well, the grammar matters a lot in some translation as well.
Yeah.
When they come into translate, they have to know what it means.
Yes.
Thing that's just looking at what's in your whole part, writing
Yeah, so that's a good point. I should bring that up. So currently I'm not doing any, there's no way to pass in information to these messages. This is what you get. I don't know, it becomes dangerous once we allow somebody to pass information in like that. Maybe it's worth it though, I'm not sure. It would be nice if, for example, we had some thing where you had to make a volume of a certain size and we said what the size had to be. That would be a good example. I think we will too.
Or you want to put them all in a message saying, or something.
Attached to the resource, so why do you care?
Yeah. I think it would just be for the, let's take the volume size multiple case, right? Let's say,
Okay, no, that's,
well, hopefully we can catch that in the API.
yeah, I was gonna say, that's
Yeah.
the problem we don't wanna have, but
Yes.
given the current state, the current driver could currently fail the call, and the customer could see, hey, you have to have multiple lanes.
That's right. And it'd be nice to say it has to be multiple bait. Unless what we could do is have a scale IO specific message. I don't want to grow like crazy, but it could say scale IO, multiple bait error or something. And that has a oh yeah. Well, they wouldn't see that. They would just see the message. The event ID, well, the constant we use would be scale IO. Yeah.
Those are APIs. Like, yeah, I know, it's really hard to find an example where we needed this.
Yeah.
Like, this one for scale, I know is a workaround until we fix our API. But do we have a good
The question is, if we discover something that we need in the future, you can code it up now.
Correct.
Well, here's the tricky part, right? I don't store these messages. So if we have other information we need to use to format the message, it has to be available when we return the message.
And in your exception handler, up stack probably don't have it.
Yeah, and I probably don't want to shove a blob into the message. Yeah.
I mean, you can stick that object in the exception every single time and just pull out that attribute. But I don't know how that doesn't help with the size case.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
it does. No, it doesn't.
We would have to invent some key and shove it into the thing. I see that getting pretty gross. I do see the value, but I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah, and also solve it later.
And we can solve it later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the easy answer, right? Is you only know what those objects are when you create the exception. The person handling the exception doesn't actually know that. So the razor knows the dictionary traffic.
Yeah.
If we need something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes those one-off cases for every message much more complicated. I want to keep those as simple as possible.
What do you mean?
Like now we have to know that a message is going to be created from this exception, so we have to show all the crap that's going to need in it. But the driver doesn't know that an exception is going to get made or a message will get made because the manager is going to be the one making the message unless you do what Eric suggested. So
I'm a bit confused because here you're listing the possible errors, the event codes, but then the new driver would also need, if the driver has a specific exception, a specific message he needs to add to this file.
Yes.
Okay, so you're not like capturing whatever the driver is throwing. And,
Exactly. There's nothing dynamic about it. And that's because of the turn facing aspect. Yeah, we don't want my grammar to slip in there.
Parameters, it's so easy for something to leak into that.
Yeah.
We do attach it to a request that we require, so that allows the work.
And if you did have errors, those would have to be patched up separately because after you pull out the string, the right language translate it.
Right.
It has to be substituted on. That's what a lot of time.
Cool. Okay. Cool. Well, let's merge this soon. I'll add some periods and we'll be good. Thank you, guys. Oh, no, yeah, exclamation marks. Yeah.
You want to be able to override messages in your page.
Okay.
Suppose you
I'll just
could
say that thing.
have the coded message, but then check, is this message ID in the override file,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
read that in.
Or there might be messages that you never want to get created. Or something.
Yeah, so you could put that in the whatever type of override and leave it blank, and then key on if there's no message.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me as maybe a later.
Yeah, I'm thinking later.
But I'll note that down.
Are you thinking then you could put in like local support contact numbers or something along those lines? Just trying to understand the use case.
Well, in a private cloud, it'd be easy. Like you can say
Yeah.
exactly, call
Oh,
up
yeah.
Joe and
Yeah.
Yeah.
or call up Joe and fix back end.
That's true. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be useful.
Yeah.
Right. Change the message catalog? Yeah. Well, I get, yeah, you could do that. Wouldn't that be easy?
I mean, the feature would be to make it easier for people to do this. Not,
Right.
Yeah,
You can always hack the string.
yeah.
Okay.
What happens to the messages that the driver is throwing right now? Will they be just translated to unknown error?
Nothing. So it wouldn't create the message. So if it's some sort of exception that we're not explicitly catching, then it just does what it currently does and goes to error. If we want to always generate a message, I'm not sure.
We should have, we might want to generic.
Like a catch-all would be another
It might
thing.
just be nice to say, yeah, something bad happened. That's even more useful than just my volume.
File not found.
Unknown error.
Yeah, well, I have the unknown error there, but we don't use it yet. It's just sitting there as an example.
Make sure I understand how this is supposed to be used. We're gonna send out more generic messages to the tenant that say, at least help them figure out, okay, something went wrong here other than errors are showing up. With the idea being it gives a point in time to the admin that they then can go look in more detailed logs.
So hopefully it's something that's tenant actionable, that we just tell them they don't have to call support. So it should save support calls because they don't just see it in error and have no idea what to change.
Yeah. But even if it is, we'll have a request ID if we want to dig for it first.
Exactly.
That alone.
So the need to cache the request IDs so he knows what actually caused it. Should we add to the message the action that actually caused the problem?
Well, the nice thing is, so yeah, you should get the request ID back on any request you do. Most people ignore it, right? And then it's too late. That's why we have the resource ID and the resource type, so they can say, oh, this volume's in error. Let me go look up the messages for this volume and see.
Yeah, but if user is using some kind of strongly scripted stuff, automated stuff, so then he won't actually know which operation failed. Maybe it would be useful to add the operation which caused the problem to the message.
I see.
The
So
message isn't useful enough by itself. You mean if the message doesn't actually imply, that you could create this thing, but now you know that it's created.
So, well, no value cost gets maybe thrown either in volume create and volume migrate.
The same message will get generated.
I think so. Because it goes through scheduler and scheduler likes to throw
Oh, you mean
no
the
value
create,
cost.
the create inside of the migration stuff?
Sorry?
You mean the create code inside of the migration code?
No, this could be.
I mean, if we're handcrafting where we putting these exception handlers and generating the messages, I wonder if that's a problem. It might be, it might not. Yeah,
We should just keep that in mind, be very explicit maybe, that there's two ways to solve it, right? You either say this is the operation that happened, or no valid host, or it wouldn't be no valid host, but unable to allocate volume instead of.
Inside of the volume manager, you don't have like the request parameters and stuff. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Okay. You should probably take advantage of request ID if you want to know. That's probably the best idea.
The nice thing is that once the stuff gets heavily used, it's just a dictionary we can add fields to. We just even need to, and maybe they're optional fields. We'll see.
either way, this sounds really awesome. I'm looking forward to having it.
Yeah.
I've been kind of pushing this since I implemented it.
Well, I've asked for instance faults, right? I've asked, please give us instance faults in Cinder. Whatever you ever want there. Fine, whatever. This is totally fine.
Cool.
Anything we can do to get away from my volumes and error. When did that happen?
Yeah.
Sometime yesterday.
What did you do to it? Okay. Let me note down some things, but that's all I really have. Unless there's more stuff that's.
Did Winston get his, is he happy with the, I mean, you're not going to add the
Winston, are
override
you happy? I'm noting down what you suggested.
But not doing right now.
right now, not right
I'm
now.
not doing it right now.
Yeah. But have an override file with a map of, in the comp setting. So future one would be look up the ID. If it's an override file, use that message. Otherwise, use the.
Is that captured?
I got notes in 3 places right now.
Okay. Someone's been capturing in the Etherpad as well, so hopefully between all three you got them.
That'd be really handy for vendors because they can put like their support thing right in there.
I need a break.
I mean, for distros, yeah, or right.
That's
Distros.
I'm just waiting. It happened before.
Okay, let's take a little break.
Well, until we figure it out, and it was obvious what I'm trying to do. That's the only way to get stuff done.
Before lunch? Okay.